Welcome back to another weekly newsletter. This week I had a conversation with someone who's very well connected in the industry. And what he said genuinely made me stop and think. Now he said to me, Ash, your content is strong, but your website doesn't match it. I'm not really sure where you're positioned. And the truth is, he's right. It wasn't criticism for the sake of it. It was a fair observation, and it forced me to look at the business properly. So this is more of a personal one. It's not about selling anything. It's about where Aura actually sits today. What the last couple of years have really looked like and where I'm taking it moving forward. See, I've spent most of my career in retail. Tiles, bathrooms, kitchen, even things like pools, hot tubs and commercial cleaning equipment. I've sold a lot of product over the years. But there came a point where it just didn't feel right anymore. Everything was driven by volume, more sales, more transactions, more pressure. And for me, the juice was simply not worth the squeeze. When I look back at what I actually enjoyed, it was never about the volume. It was never about the commission. It was always about the people. The conversations, the relationships, the trust you build over time when you're working properly with someone. And that's the part that's always stuck with me. And that's what I wanted to build on. After hundreds, if not thousands of conversations across different projects, I started to notice a gap. Not in product, because there's no shortage of product in this industry, but in how things are actually handled. There isn't really a space where someone brings together proper production knowledge, real project understanding, and works closely with the right people to get the best outcome. And that's where Aura Surfaces started to take shape. Aura was never built to be a volume business, and it never will be. I'm not interested in taking on as many clients as possible. Now, what matters to me is being involved in the right projects. The ones where at the end of it, you can stand there with the client and the team and say, look at what we've achieved together. That's where the value is. Now, I'll never claim to be a designer because I'm not. But what I do know is the products. I know how they perform, where they work, and just as importantly, where they don't. That only comes from being in it year after year, project after project, and seeing what works and what causes problems. One of the biggest takeaways from this week's conversation was the misalignment between what I say and how the business is currently presented. The content is clear in how I speak and how I think, but the website still leans too much towards a more general product-led approach. That's part of the transition. Moving from retail mindset into a specialist, project-led business doesn't just happen overnight. It evolves, and along the way, there are things that don't quite line up yet. But what it made me realize is that I need to be clearer. Clear on who I want to work with, clear on how we operate, and clear on what we're not. Because the reality is, not every project is a good fit. I've turned work away before, and I'll continue to do so if it doesn't align. There's only so much of me to go around. And if you're going to do this properly, you have to be selective. See, Aura Surfaces isn't a walk-in showroom, and it's not about people coming in, picking something off the shelf and asking for a price. That's not how we're built. The business is structured around projects, around collaboration, and around getting involved early enough to actually make a difference. Because I've seen it too many times, where decisions are left too late and the outcome ends up compromised, budgets are already tight, materials become an afterthought, and suddenly you're trying to fix problems that could have been avoided from the start. Now, budget matters, of course it does. We can value engineer where needed, but when everything is rushed, that's when the issues start to creep in. Time and clarity at the beginning can change everything. Another point that came up was around exclusive products, that we don't necessarily have enough of them. I understand that view, but the reality is most so-called exclusive products in this industry aren't actually exclusive. They're just positioned that way. And for me, it's not about having something no one else can get. It's about knowing what to use, when to use it, and how to source it properly. We already have access to some of the best manufacturers in Italy and Spain. High-end porcelain, engineered oak, handmade concrete from Portugal, terrazzo from Italy, even full marble solutions straight from the quarry. But that isn't being communicated clearly. That is on me to fix. The way we bring products into the business is simple. It comes from real projects. A designer needs something specific. A client wants a particular finish, and we go and find the right solution. It's not about filling a catalogue. It's about solving problems properly. That's the part of the job I enjoy the most. Getting out there, meeting suppliers, visiting factories, walking quarries, and sitting down with clients to understand what they're actually trying to achieve. Because there's a responsibility that comes with this. Some of these projects are specified a year or more in advance, and things can change. Products get discontinued, lead times shift, availability becomes an issue. If you're not on top of that, it causes problems further down the line. Because we're involved, we can see those things early. We can advise, we can adjust, and we can keep the project moving properly. Suitability is another big one for me. I won't supply something if I don't believe it's right for the environment, no matter how good it looks. See, I've had those conversations many times, and I'll continue to have them. I'd rather be upfront and get it right than deal with issues later. From the start, the vision for Aura has been clear. Be involved early, work with clients who care about the outcomes, and collaborate with designers who value input rather than just looking for a supply. On the flip side, there are ways of working that just don't fit. Price first decisions, rush procurement, and just send me a quote. Interactions aren't where we add value, and they're not what the business is built around. Now, I fully accept that the website doesn't completely reflect all of this yet, and that's a fair point. But part of the evolution of Aura Surfaces is listening to people, being shaped by the people who use us. The direction is clear, and the structure will continue to catch up with that as we move forward. Thanks for listening. If you're embarking on a project, or if you want to know more, or just have a conversation, pick up the phone, fill in a consultation form, and I would love to have a conversation with you about your project. Now, I may not be for you, you may not be for me, but we don't know that until we have that conversation. I'll see you next week.